A wild week 12, a lot to discuss. Welcome into the All NFL Now Monday Huddle. We got a loaded show for you today. My name is Adam Hoge from CHGO in Chicago, joined by my buddy Bo Brack out there in the desert covering the Cardinals for PHNX. We got a lot to talk about. We're covered all across our networks today. We got Wulf from PHLY joining us here in a little bit. Zac Stevens from DNVR is going to join us, and Joseph Hoyt from DLLS. One of the crazier games yesterday involving the Cowboys, of course. But I guess we start with the losers to start the show, as it was a tough day for the Bears, tough day for the Cards. Bo, how you doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, when I look at this NFC West or just this NFC playoff picture, it got even murkier yesterday. I thought the Bears could play a little bit of a not necessarily a spoiler. I don't think the Vikings are any danger here, but that Dallas win certainly put Washington in a little bit of a danger zone going forward. And we know how Cliff Kingsbury coached teams kind of fall off, especially offensively, the second half of the season. Is that what's going on in Washington? But the Cardinals had an opportunity to really kind of put the NFC West on ice yesterday, Hogan. They dropped it. Now they're in a dogfight the rest of the way. But I think there were so many opportunities yesterday for so many different teams, and they just laid an egg.
Yeah, no, it's and the Cardinals were definitely one of those teams. I don't know if the Bears quite laid an egg, but they certainly found a new and interesting way to not win a football game, which they have become experts in this season. We will talk about all of it. What we like to do, though, to start the show each and every week, gives us an opportunity to also address some of the other things in some of the other games briefly. Our best and worst of week 12. I will start with my best, and just got to keep giving a shout out to the Detroit Lions, who are no longer the Lions that we had known for so many years. They are now roaring and continuing to win football games relatively easy. A 24-6 win over the Colts. But what I really wanted to highlight as the best, it is just so much fun. I tend to be an old school football guy, Bo, and I can just appreciate a two-headed running back attack. And it is so fun watching Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Of course, Montgomery was in Chicago, and a lot of people here don't want to lose him. The Bears supposedly didn't want to either, but, you could do that by offering more money.
Right.
Now he's in Detroit, and they complement each other so well. Jahmyr Gibbs with the speed, some of the swift moves that he has. He can move laterally, and then David Montgomery just running guys over. He's always had that great contact balance that he runs with, and it's just fun to watch the Lions, like which guy's in, what type of styles are going to be. I really enjoy that. And then my worst, I'm going to go to the Cowboys Commanders game. Just crazy special teams game all over. But to have 3 missed field goals in the first quarter alone, one of which was blocked, and then multiple missed extra points by the Commanders, including late in the game where they could have tied it. Man, I don't know how anything else could have been worse than that. To have 5 missed kicks, it was just insane. And then somehow the Cowboys, we'll talk about it later as we get into our Cowboys segment, but they also technically returned 2 kickoffs for a touchdown. One, Turpin, went the full way with a crazy spin move after originally dropping the ball, and then they actually returned the onside kick for a touchdown later in the game too. But the missed kicks in that game are my worst, Bo.
I mean, Washington's now lost 3 straight, and they've got a pair of feisty teams on deck. Like, they take on Tennessee and New Orleans. Now, on any given week, they can be terrible, but what we saw from Tennessee and Will Levis yesterday was signs of life with a little pesky win over the Houston Texans. But if I'm looking for my tip of the cap, it's to the two teams, not Jacksonville, but the other two teams in Florida. I mean, with Tampa Bay and Miami's won 3 straight now, and Tampa Bay taking business against Tommy Cutlets down there in the Giants, and Baker Mayfield going off for 30 burger, and he's giving his homage to Tommy DeVito down there. Look out for the Bucs in their upcoming schedule, because it is as bad as it gets. I mean, it's like Indiana Hoosiers style Big Ten, non-conference opponents. There's just nobody there that's going to really slow them down. I know they're 5-6, and so are the Dolphins, and the Dolphins have a big matchup coming up against the Packers. But I think it's what they've done leading up through this week that's put them right back in the thick of things. And I think that they've done a really good job, both those teams, in weathering the storm on some injuries and putting themselves right back in the thick of things as far as the respective playoff picture for the NFC and the AFC. So I liked what I saw from the Bucs. I know it's a bad team, the New York Giants, who have just given up. And then, of course, you had what the Dolphins were able to accomplish. They also took advantage of a down team in the Patriots, who've been playing well defensively lately, but they win. Both those teams win pretty handily, and they move on to the next week 13, with a chance to continue their respective hot streaks. I like what I've seen from those two teams. I wouldn't sleep on them going forward.
I'm with you on the Bucs. I think you look at I think they're a better team than the record indicates, and you certainly look at the schedule, and you feel like that they can still sneak in. They're certainly going. They're keeping themselves afloat as Washington kind of stumbles here. And the other thing about the Commanders is they should have another loss in there too, because they got lucky with the Hail Mary against the Bears too, going about a month back. So they're, it always felt like they were a little bit ahead of schedule here with how hard they came on at the beginning of the season. And now I think we're starting to see that. But Bo, let's dive into your Cardinals here a little bit. This was, in my opinion, one of the more underrated matchups of the weekend. I'm sure, you guys certainly knew how big it was, but sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle. You realize with this NFC West, the way it's been stacking up, this was a huge game and a huge opportunity, as you pointed off the top, for the Cardinals to go into Seattle. If you could pull off that win, it really would have put the Cardinals in the driver's seat. Instead, to only score 6 points, terribly disappointing. Shout out to Mike McDonald, obviously, in that Seahawks defense, which, there's certainly been plenty of signs this season that's something that's sustainable in Seattle, and it's certainly why they hired him. Now all of a sudden you look at the standings, and the Cardinals are on the outside looking in. That's just in real time right now, but technically, Seattle has the tiebreaker in this moment in the NFC West. The Cardinals sitting behind Washington as the 8th seed right now in the playoffs. So sort of a visual look, too, at how big of a game that really was yesterday.
Yeah, it was a massive misstep, and it wasn't just a matter of they were on the losing side and they just kind of pick up the pieces and move forward. They were dominated by the Seahawks defense. And I think that's a key point going forward. You talk about Mike McDonald, who came over from the #1 defense. He was the DC for the Ravens last season, and they were a little bit slow out of the gates. And I think after their bye week, after beating and scrapping and clawing their way past the 49ers with the dramatic win last weekend, I think their defense has really found its way under McDonald, and they've got 2 top 5 picks, Hoge, who are balling out. Like Devin Witherspoon from Illinois made an incredible play to force Kyler Murray into that moonball pick 6 interception from Kobe Bryant that pretty much put that one in the bag for the Seahawks. And a tremendous play from Witherspoon, top 5 pick, and then a really kind of turning the clock back, a top 5 pick from the Giants a couple of years ago. Leonard Williams was a game wrecker yesterday. Like, he started find his way. And I think on all 3 levels of that defense, they've got playmakers. Like, is Ernest Jones, after, him kind of going and playing, musical chairs with his teams from the Rams to the Titans and now up there in Seattle, Is he going to play the role of like Roquan Smith in his rape from McDonald's Ravens defense last season? It looks like he's kind of steadied some things over there. And I don't think you can kind of overlook the Seahawks just because of their defense. Smith's fine. He threw a crucial red zone interception that put them in a tough spot, kind of opened the door for the Cardinals to get back into it. But the Seahawks kind of changed my mind of who they were. I think that they're legit and they're not going to go away for the remainder of the season. As for the Cardinals, just a brutal misstep. It was a bad time to no-show offensively after a couple solid weeks that they were able to string a row, from Miami to against your Bears to against the Jets. I know those are some teams that have struggled mightily, but you thought that they would have been able to show up more so than just 2 field goals from Chad Ryland, Kyler Murray and crew. They're going to have to figure it out on the fly. They're going to have to figure it out quickly on the road next week against the 9-2 Vikings team. I think, I'm not counting the Cardinals out here, but they're going to have to put it together really quickly, get that downfield passing attack back on track, and they get this run game against the really stout run defense coached up by Brian Flores in order to kind of keep themselves from having to play too much catch up in the final stretch of the season. They've got a chance post Minnesota, Hoge, to take on, a Patriots, a Panthers team back-to-back weeks to string together some wins, but they got to do some work beforehand to where this thing doesn't get too far out of their reach.
Yeah, and if we thought this game against Seattle was big, just wait till 2 weeks from now when they match up again, especially when you look at the schedule last week. Obviously, a tough game for the Cardinals to go to Minnesota. Meanwhile, the Seahawks, they get to play the Jets. Now, they do have to fly across the country to go do that, and then back that up with another road trip to Arizona. But it just seems like, if these games this next week go the way that they'll probably be, favored in Vegas, that's an absolute must win then in 2 weeks against the Seahawks, in Arizona at home.
Right. And you're going to have to correct some things. I mean, it just felt like it was a one-sided affair yesterday. It was a nice defensive battle in the first half, but it was just there's no ways around it. It was a no-show for the offensive side of the football. And for this Cardinals team where the expectations were that was going to be the strength, and for the defense to have kind of done some things that you're encouraged by, just giving up 1 touchdown in the last 12 quarters, for them to come out of that with a loss and now don't have that stranglehold on the division any longer and have to win some really key games going forward. It's you got to look to Kyler Murray, who's making $46 million this season, kind of pick up the slack there. It's going to have to happen if they want to go to where they want to go. They no longer can kind of put it on cruise control the rest of the way, and which is good. I think that for year 2 in a rebuild, they can facing this type of adversity is good for them, but they're going to have to come meet the challenge and play a little bit better absolutely play a lot better than they did yesterday on the offensive side of football. And James Conner, it's one of those things at 29 years old where you thought, hey, it's a slam dunk. This guy is an absolute extension candidate. 49 yards total on the ground from the Cardinals rushing attack. They didn't have that much against the Jets last week. Like, is that something to be worried about going forward? Because if they don't have that balance, this passing attack hasn't done enough to give you confidence that, they're going to be able to keep it going down the stretch of the season.
All right. Now, I'm seeing a lot of comments in here about how it's tough to be an Arizona sports fan. I'd like to take you to Chicago for a moment, where the Bears have now not won a football game in 42 days. They've managed to just find new and interesting ways to lose these. Obviously they had the Hail Mary blocked field goal last week against the Packers, and then again this week they lose on the last play. But this time, after being able to force overtime, was sort of an incredible comeback at the end of the game by Caleb Williams and an onside kick that they actually recovered. Feels like we never see that anymore in the NFL. And Caleb whistles one to DJ Moore to get in field goal range. And you're like, is there any way this kick can go in? Because they had another one blocked early on in the game. This has become a theme, and Cairo Santos makes it to go to overtime. But then the Vikings kind of just go right through the Bears defense and get into field goal range and win the game. So another tough loss for the Bears. Bo, I'm just kind of curious from your perspective, things seem to get a little dicey there with Caleb Williams for a few weeks. Now the last 2 weeks with a new offense coordinator and Thomas Brown seems to be back on track. I mean, honestly, yesterday, as much as this hurts for the Bears to lose another game, he was outstanding, and some of these throws he made were incredible. So I think everybody right now is still feeling pretty good about Caleb.
Yeah, isn't that kind of what you tune into week by week now going forward for the Bears is to kind of check in what the latest is on Caleb? Like, is he showing signs of being the guy? And I think yesterday he answered that with an emphatic yes with the 340. You know, he took a brutal sack, I think, what was it, down the stretch there, but outside of that, he looks really good. I think he looked the most comfortable he has throwing from the pocket all season long, and that's a definite sign that you want to see from the young man after what I witnessed, you know, the last 2 weeks, one in Arizona and in the week previous to this one, where he just seemed like he didn't want to stay in the pocket. He stayed back there and made some great throws, Hogan. I think that's a definite sign of encouragement for Bears fans. I saw on you guys just posted that he's surpassed the rookie number for passing yards. That's a step in the right direction. So Caleb Williams slowly but surely righting the ship for himself and not kind of raising any questions if he's the guy going forward. I think he's answering those questions now.
Yeah, breaking the Bears rookie quarterback passing record. Not exactly one of the greatest records of all time. However, it does matter that it only took him 11 games. It's not like he broke it in week 18. He did it 11 games. And actually, when you zoom out and look at his numbers, he's having a pretty good rookie season as well. To your point, though, really bad sack he took in overtime. However, a little bit more context. I think there might be more to that story. It seemed like maybe his check down option didn't do what he was supposed to do or something there. So, but still, you want to flush out, throw the ball away if it's not going to plan. Pretty much the only blunder in what was otherwise an outstanding game for Caleb Williams. But unfortunately, the Bears managed to lose again. All right, we big game last night involving the Eagles. We know PHLY excited about that result. So we're going to bring in Bo Wulf here in a minute. But first, Bo's going to tell you about game time.
Yeah, as the games are heating up, of course, you're going to want to look for yourself to get some tickets to maybe a Cardinals game as they fight for the postseason. Or if you want to go check in, get eyes on Caleb Williams as he makes his run through his rookie season. Game Time is the app that's going to get you there. It is the lowest prices guaranteed for all the events you're looking for. It's just not sporting events. I mean, I'm looking here in Phoenix. Sure, you've got the NBA Cup, Lakers, Suns. Would love to see that. You can get in the door for $94. You got WWE Monday Night Raw. You've got some great concerts. Probably want to see like Trans-Siberian Orchestra right now. Get, you know, the reason for the season. Game Time's the way you're going to get to all these events, and you're going to get there at the price that you're going to want to pay. You're not going to see any, you know, huge, you know, extras as far as when you're going to check out their Game Time guarantee. You're always going to get the best price. If you find the tickets, same section, row for less, Game Time's going to credit you for 110% of the difference. You check it out. They've got the job loss insurance as well. You lose your job, you need a refund. Game Time's there. Event cancellation protection. It's all there with our friends over at Game Time. It's the lowest price guaranteed event cancellation protection. Download the app today and utilize the promo code ALLCITY, and you're going to save $20 on your first checkout there. Game Time, lowest price guarantee. What time is it? Game time.
That's right. Now it's also time to go out to Philadelphia as we bring in our guy, Bo Wulf. You can follow him on Twitter at Bo_Wulf. It seemed like kind of a possible tough game for the Eagles last night. You had the Sean McVay, Vic Fangio rematch storyline and everything. Thought maybe the Rams might be able to pull off an upset in this one. And no, the Eagles kind of did what they've been doing here as of late and sort of cruised to a big 37-20 win out there in SoFi. Bo, before we get into some of the specifics, just tell us a little bit about, I don't know, what your mindset was going into this one. If you thought this was going to be, maybe tougher than the results indicated. And meanwhile, Saquon Barkley just keeps doing some incredible things.
Unbelievable, Saquon, and we can get to that, whether you guys think that he belongs in the MVP conversation. But to me, the most interesting thing in this matchup coming in was that little chess match between Sean McVay and Vic Fangio. And Hoge, I know you know a lot about that, dating back to 2018 when Fangio sort of laid the blueprint to stopping that Rams offense. And you could tell that like Sean McVay had been waiting and waiting for this game for so long. And the first two drives, the Rams drive right down the field. It's like 9 yards per play. They don't even face a third down. They do fumble the ball away on the first possession in the red zone, but then they score a touchdown after that. And so you're thinking, okay, maybe McVay is getting the better of this rematch. And then very quickly, Vic Fangio shuts it all down. It's 3 straight 3-and-outs after that. They completely stifle the Rams offense thereafter. And part of it, there's a little bit of poetry to it, was bringing Zach Bond down to the line of scrimmage as sort of an overhang defender, putting an extra guy on the line of scrimmage, which is what he did back in 2018 to help stop that Rams offense. And so I think that Sean McVay is going to be having these Vic Fangio nightmares for a long time coming. This Eagles defense looks like one of the best defenses in the league. They have answered every test so far, and they have faced a lot of really good challenges on offense, different kinds of offenses. Now, next week, they'll play Lamar Jackson and the best offense in football, so we'll see how they do there. But they did lose Brandon Graham last night to a season-ending injury, which is a huge deal for them. He was playing at such a high level at 36 years old, also like the mouthpiece and the heart of that locker room. And so that's going to be a big challenge for them because they also lost Bryce Huff to injured reserve, short-term probably, last week. So they're very thin on the edge right now. But other than that, I mean, Jalen Carter is playing at an unbelievably high level. He was double-teamed like 80% of his pass rush snaps last night. The other guys are taking advantage of that in the one-on-ones that they're getting. And then the secondary and the linebackers are playing at a level that Eagles fans are not accustomed to. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell have been awesome as rookies, and the linebackers have been an unbelievable surprise as well. So the Eagles defense, even before we get to Saquon Barkley, has been sort of the story of the season for Eagles fans.
I mean, then it makes this offense that, they turn over the ball on downs to end the half, but that, was ending that outside. It was a weird play, but outside of that, just one punt. And then they've got 7 scoring drives that they put together. Every time I looked up at my TV, they're marching down the field. Saquon Barkley's getting chunk yardage. What's impressed you? What has kind of gotten this? Is it just as simple as Saquon has gotten going and this offense gets going? But it's certainly put Jalen Hurts in a really great spot for success throwing the football with what Barkley's doing on the ground.
Yeah, it's funny because this team is built and is succeeding so differently than the way that Howie Roseman usually builds his teams. And there's a bit of irony to it because on defense, usually they're built defensive line first, second, and third, and then figure out the rest. And this team is winning on the reliance of its back seven. And then on offense, the running game, they care about the running game because they have one of the best offensive lines in football. But for so long, that has been sort of a turning table of running backs who didn't really matter. And the theory behind signing Saquon Barkley for the Eagles this offseason was they wanted somebody who could turn what was blocked for 5, 6, 7, 8 yards into explosive plays. And you saw 2 70+ yard touchdown runs from Saquon Barkley last night. He's got 5 runs this season of 50 yards or more. He is absolutely doing that. But I have also been just so impressed with Saquon Barkley on a carry by carry basis. Like, he's making guys miss in the hole and picking up those sort of hidden 3 yards after contact. Sometimes you see him turn the corner on the sideline and just sort of steal 5 yards. He's been unbelievable, better than I think anybody could have reasonably expected. I mean, right now he's on pace to break Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. He's been absolutely insane, over 300 yards from scrimmage last night. I do think that he belongs in the MVP conversation because a game like last night, they didn't have Devontae Smith. And so A.J. Brown is like the only relevant guy in the passing game getting targets, had 6 catches for over 100 yards. But the next highest receiver was Jahan Dotson, who had 1 catch for 4 yards. So this offense is not built around its passing game. It's built around running and defense, which is not something that Howie Roseman is usually accustomed to.
Yeah, I want to chime in on that conversation because I'm all in on Saquon Barkley for MVP right now. Now there's plenty of season left. We'll see how this plays out. But I personally, I just hate how much of the quarterback award this has become. I get it. more times than not a quarterback should win this, but that doesn't mean they should just automatically go to a quarterback every year. And what Saquon Barkley is doing right now, if Saquon Barkley can't be, the front runner for MVP right now, then it'll never be any other position, because he's already set his career high in rushing yards through 11 games. He's already at 1392. That's his career high. And beyond just what the numbers say, which is incredible. Eric Dickerson's, he's on pace for that. I don't know if he'll get there, obviously, but if he can keep this up with the pace he's going, because he's also he's not quite to career high in attempts, but he'll probably be there within a couple games here. So you worry about, longevity. Does the season start to wear on him? We'll see. But if it doesn't, then that's even more reason why he should be the MVP this season, because at the running back position, where you're taking a beating every single week, I guess, unless you're Saquon Barkley, because you're just kind of breaking tackles and getting away from everybody and running free.
You got to be tired after all those long runs, though.
Well, right. But then you take into what I always like to talk about when it comes to the MVP award, which is just how valuable this player is to the team. We were talking about this on this show like a month ago. Like, what would the Eagles be without Saquon Barkley? Now, the defense, to your point, Bo, has turned the corner, and now it's kind of a different conversation on that side of the ball. I think they're more of a complete team. But earlier in the season, before that kind of all started to happen, we were like, man, Barkley is carrying this team right now. So I think even just in terms of value, he's making sort of the intangible case for MVP beyond just what the numbers say.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to me, it's probably like a 3-horse race with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, I guess. But I think he absolutely deserves to be one of the front runners. This Eagles team would not be in good shape without Saquon Barkley. The passing game itself has just been above average, not elite, and certainly not good enough for them to have reeled off 7 straight wins. What's so impressive about Saquon is I think your point about him holding up despite the workload is totally spot on. And you're probably worried as an Eagles fan about what that could mean for January, what that could mean for next season. But the way that he is, he doesn't look any worse for wear right now. And he has been both like sustaining for the offense. He's what helps them move the chains on like a drive-by-drive basis. And he's their best ticket to an explosive play. Like, it's not just sort of a ground and pound all volume. I mean, he's averaging 6.2 yards per carry. That's the second most for any running back this decade, with at least 200 carries. So like, it's efficiency, it's explosiveness, it's everything. He is absolutely the key to the Eagles offense. I think, I mean, if you ask guys in the building, they are blown away that he's been this good.
Well, also, when you look at the total touchdowns, he has 10, but you look at his quarterback, he's got 11 rushing touchdowns. Saquon has to kind of take a back seat, to those goal line carries, which I hope voters, when it comes down to it, understand that, because what Saquon has set this offense up for, God knows how many total touchdowns this season, that he has to kind of take a back seat. I loved his answer, Bo, to this last week, where they're like, are you up, I'll paraphrase it. Were you upset that, you don't get those goal line carries? He's like, look, if I want those touchdowns, I just need to score before we get to that point. I mean, it's the absolute right answer there. And to see the duo of them in the post game, it looks like there's no animosity. It's things are coming up all Eagles right now, and that offense, that defense is rolling. Really, just the Eagles are a freight train right now. When you look at this remaining schedule, they're keeping themselves in the thick of this. What do they need to do to kind of lock in potentially that top seed in the NFC?
Yeah, so the potential tiebreakers with the Lions are going to be a little bit tough for them. If it's, let's say they both end up at 15-2, so the Eagles win out, which would be wild. They'd end the season on a 15-game winning streak. They need the Lions' loss to beat the Packers, because that's the common opponent they have that the Eagles beat. It was a big win for the Eagles yesterday. The Rams game was a big one. Now their next couple games are Ravens, and then Panthers, and then Steelers. So if one of their losses for the Eagles comes to the Ravens or Steelers, that's an AFC loss. It's not so bad, and that could bode well if it's a 14-3 tiebreaker for the Eagles and Lions. But the Lions, to me, like, I don't know if they look like they're going to lose 2 games, but you sort of knock on wood if you're a Lions fan. But I think right now it's pointing towards a 2 seed, but it's certainly not out of the question for the Eagles to get the top spot.
All right, Bo Wulf, great stuff on the Eagles. You guys got PHLY Eagles coming up here at the top of the hour?
2:00. Zach just got in from his red eye from LA, so we are ready to go.
Ooh, get that caffeine rolling.
That's right.
Make sure you check out our Eagles show coming up at the top of the hour as soon as we are done here. Bo, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and as we go from a team locked into the playoffs to another one of our all-city teams trying to make it in as well. On the AFC side, though, the Denver Broncos currently in the 7 seed with a big win yesterday. Bo Nix continuing to do what he's been doing all season, an impressive rookie year as he is firmly in contention for the Rookie of the Year award. We bring in Zac Stevens now, who covers the Broncos out there in Denver for DNVR. What's going on, Zach?
Looks like he's muted.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think you're muted, Zach. Still muted. Still muted. Here, while we figure that out, Zach, I'll run through a couple of the details from this game, Bo, because 29-19 win for the Broncos as they moved to 7-5. This game, though, was kind of tighter than maybe the final score indicated. The Broncos did cover, but this, there was some defense being played early on, and it was Brandon Jones who came up with a huge interception on Gardner Minshew in the second half that sort of flipped the momentum and really was a key play to get the Broncos rolling. Do we want to try Zach's audio here again, Zach? Still not working. All right. He's going to try one more thing as we but meanwhile, I also want to point out, Bo Nix to Cortland Sutton twice, a couple nice throws again.
Yeah.
And in the crazy special teams plays all around the league yesterday, the Raiders did successfully fake a punt in this game too.
Yeah, the Bo Nix.
Am I back, guys?
There he is.
There we go. Zach. We got you now, Zach.
All right, fellas. Yeah, you guys are right. I mean, this game was a wild game for the Broncos. The 2-8 Raiders facing the Broncos. This was a must-win for the Broncos. You can't fall to a bad team like the Raiders. In the first half, it was dicey. In the first half, actually, the Raiders had their biggest halftime lead of the season. It was only a 4-point lead, but still, I guess that's a win for the Raiders. And the Broncos were just stuck to kicking field goals in the first half, and then they turned it on in the second half, and it really started with Cortland Sutton, who just took off in the third quarter. He had almost 80 receiving yards in the third quarter alone. And guys, with Cortland Sutton, a little fun fact here, especially for any fantasy owners around the NFL. In the past 5 weeks, no one has more receiving yards than Cortland Sutton. In the entire NFL, he has almost 500 receiving yards in the past 5 weeks. He is really helping Bo Nix out. Bo Nix is really helping him out. And what I wanted to say when I joined you guys was I love that we're talking about one MVP conversation, and now we're talking about a Rookie of the Year conversation. Things are looking good for the awards in the All-City Network.
Looking very good. I mean, Kyler took his name firmly out of the MVP yesterday, but we won't talk about that. It was a very nice week to kind of say, has he entered the chat? No, but Bo Nix continues to add to his Rookie of the Year campaign. But let's stay with Cortland Sutton because, this was a little bit the offseason. Cortland he was kind of at odds a little bit with the organization. He restructures his deal, but he seems to be he's emerged as one of the more quarterback-proof wide receivers in the league right now. I mean, he no matter who's throwing him the ball, he seems to be productive and make plays for his team. What are the kind of the main reasons for that, Zach?
Oh, it's such a good point. And one of the things about Cortland, he's a 90-10 guy. And what I mean by that is he's not a 50-50 guy. When you throw the ball his way, it's 90% going to be caught. He is just such a good athlete, and he's so good. Even when he's covered, Bo Nix can throw the ball up to him, and he's going to come down with it more than not. Like I said, just a dominant quarter in the third quarter yesterday, almost 80 receiving yards. And he had 2 touchdowns in this game. And the first one, he told us after the game, he said, yeah, they put me one-on-one coverage, and it was, okay, you're going to do that? We're going to challenge you. And Courtland went up and got the ball there. And it's going to be interesting with Courtland Sutton after this season because he's on track to have his best season as a Bronco. And like you said, before this season, he wanted more money. He's only about $15 million per year receiver. We obviously know the receiver market's up to $35 million. Is he that $35 million guy? No, probably not. But he's going to want almost double his pay after this season. He's still under contract for one more season. It's going to be really interesting because him and Bo are developing a relationship that you don't want to let Courtland Sutton go. So I think Courtland Sutton's earning himself a lot of money and also being very, very key to this Broncos success right now. You look at Bo, the Broncos, after a slow start, Bo and the Broncos are 7-3 after their 0-2 start this season.
So another award I want to bring up, and there's some stiff competition for this, but when I look at the Broncos and what expectations were for this season and what he's doing with the quarterback, I mean, Sean Payton has to be in consideration for Coach of the Year, too, I would think. I mean, it's been a pretty quick turnaround, and I know the conversation we're having here in Chicago a lot is, and it continues to blow my mind all the years I've covered this league, that teams don't seem to understand this or they balk at paying coaches. Coaching matters in football more than any other sport, and it's so obvious each and every week in almost every single game. And so the Broncos go out, they make that huge move, they trade for Sean Payton, and now you're seeing the dividends. And so I guess where do you guys right now in that conversation put Sean Payton for possible Coach of the Year? I don't know if he's going to win it, but he should definitely be in the conversation.
100%. I completely agree, Adam. He should be a finalist for this. Obviously, what Dan Quinn's done to the start of the season had him as the front runner, but now he's kind of taken a step back, just like Jaden Daniels has taken a step back in the Rookie of the Year conversation. And Sean and Bo are climbing up that ladder right now, but he should absolutely be in this conversation. Look, guys, this was a team that ESPN had as the second worst roster in the NFL entering this season. Pro Football Focus had them as the worst roster in the NFL. Vegas over-under was 5.5 wins for this team. They surpassed 5.5 wins with 6 games left in the season right now. They're a game and a half up on the final wild card spot. This is a team now that is favored to make the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Again, with the worst roster in the NFL, according to some national media outlets. Now, maybe they misjudged that, but also Sean Payton has done such a fantastic job, and credit to his coaching staff, which obviously he gets credit for because he hired Vance Joseph, has taken this defense from being good and talented to being absolutely elite. You have some people calling them the anonymous defense because there's not many big names on it, yet Nick Bonito is second in the NFL in sacks right now. You obviously have an all-pro in Pat Surtain, but outside of that, it's just a lot of guys that they've gotten the better of, and that's a big credit to coaching here. And when it comes to Sean Payton and his development of Bo Nix, boy, Adam, this should be something that Bears fans look at and gives them hope for Caleb Williams in the future, because this is something where coaching can matter so much, especially for a quarterback. And it's not just about getting a good coach. It's about getting the right coach for your quarterback, specifically the play caller on the offensive side. Look, Russell Wilson, clearly not as bad of a quarterback as the Broncos thought he was by taking on an $80 million dead cap hit. What he's doing in Pittsburgh has been impressive, but there was just no meshing Sean Payton and Russell Wilson last year, and that was not going to work moving forward. A lot of people thought Bo Nix was a second or a third round graded quarterback this year, the 6th quarterback taken. The Broncos got dunked on for having the 6th quarterback taken with the 12th overall pick, and look how it's turning out right now. Bo Nix right now, guys, is in insane territory. There's a stat that just came out from CBS Sports. In the past 10 years, quarterbacks that have had 20 total touchdowns and 2 or fewer turnovers in a 10-game stretch. So 20 touchdowns, 2 or fewer turnovers in a 10-game stretch. I'm not just talking rookies. I'm talking any quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. And after yesterday, Bo Nix joined that conversation. He's one of 5 quarterbacks to do that. The other 4 are either Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers. And man, it's a credit to Bo Nix, but it is also such a credit to Sean Payton for having Bo Nix play this well, but then also having him play this well in his rookie season. He is really catering this offense and this team to him.
So
some elite company there.
Real
yeah,
quick,
go ahead.
yes, real quick. Well, I just want to. I don't mean to change the conversation, but I feel like you two are very qualified to speak on this because you both covered, head coach quarterback situations that worked well or didn't work well. Because here in Chicago, everybody's like trying to figure out how you maximize Caleb, and then all of a sudden in the last 2 weeks, after they make the coordinator switch and they bring in Thomas Brown, who has already interviewed for a bunch of head coaching jobs, who was Sean McVay's assistant head coach. He had that title with the Rams when they won the Super Bowl. I think we're all trying to figure out, well, is there a world in which you just promote Thomas Brown and make him the head coach if the pairing with Caleb seems like it's working? Zach, I'll start with you, but Bo, I also want to hear your opinion on this. Just like, if how important is that relationship that should override everything else? Like, if they're meshing together, if it's working, do you go all in and just say, well, then just hire him because you don't want to mess with that dynamic? You don't want a Nathaniel Hackett. Nobody wants that. No one wants that situation to play out.
Oh, yeah. I think I can speak on the Nathaniel Hackett situation pretty good being here in Denver. And you're 100% right there. You don't want that. And if it's working out, you went all in on Caleb Williams. He is your guy. Not necessarily that Justin Fields was going to be the future, but you moved on for him for Caleb Williams. He's a number 1 overall pick. And if they are meshing, then you do that. Now, you interview other guys, but you 100% do that because you look at what is successful with these head coach and quarterback pairings. And that outside of the Cincinnati Bengals, if you have your quarterback playing well, you are going to be a playoff team. And this Bengals team is such an outlier, not just this year, but in the history of football, specifically the last 10 or 20 years when quarterback play has been even more important. You have that quarterback playing well, then that is your future and you will have success. So if it's really that good of a connection, you have to give that a very serious consideration.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on this. I think it's important, obviously, for the development of Caleb Williams, for him and Thomas Brown to continue to build on this season. But, give him an interview, sure. But I think that the Bears maybe set their sights a little bit higher as far as just kind of the leader. The leadership qualities is for that you look for from the head coach. And I don't think it necessarily has to be an offensive guy like what we've seen here in the desert. Jonathan Gannon has a defensive background. He was able to set up an infrastructure to surround Kyler Murray for success from a roster standpoint, from a play calling standpoint, and found his OC and Drew Petzing that I think overall you would say is a success. If Brown can continue on as their OC, if the new head coach likes Brown and they mesh well, I can see that relationship continuing. I just think it's a little far-fetched to go from passing game coordinator to OC to head coach. I don't know if that path has ever been successful at the NFL level. It seemed to me that could be a little unprecedented.
Wasn't that Kevin O'Connell though? And I think he's having a ton of success now. Just because one guy's done it, Bo, to be totally fair to you, doesn't mean that it's just going to work because some guy's done it in the past.
Right. Well, we might see that climb possibly by Friday. To be, I don't know if somebody's. Well, actually, that's not true because I was going to say I don't know if anybody's ever gone from consultant role to head coach by the end of a season, but then again, the Colts hired Jeff Saturday,
right,
out of a TV studio. So we've seen crazier things happen.
So what you're saying, really quick, Adam, what you're saying is you might become the Bears head coach, going from analyst to head coach here.
Well, that would be even crazier than the Jeff Saturday hire. It certainly would. Zach, let's as we let you go here on the Broncos, tee us up just here on what's remaining for Denver to hold on to a playoff spot, because I think right now your guys' mentality's got to be, man, if they make the playoffs, that's a successful season. And right now they're sitting in that 7th seed. What's the path here to hold on to that? Because I don't know that the competition's too stiff behind you guys, but man, those Miami Dolphins sure are coming on strong all of a sudden.
Man, that's a scary one right here. And Bo Nix is playing tremendous football. But Tua, when Tua has played, you talk about head coach and quarterback just being on the exact same page. Mike McDaniel and Tua are just a perfect match for one another. And when Tua plays, the Miami Dolphins are absolutely fantastic. And now they're a game and a half back of the Broncos. They've jumped the Colts. They've jumped the Bengals for the Broncos' biggest competition here for that final playoff spot. The Broncos have a Monday night game against the Browns next week. You got to win that one. Again, I know the Browns are coming off a big win, but that was a tough division win for them. You have to beat a 3-win team when you want to make a playoff push. And the Broncos have a bye week. It's Sean Payton's latest bye week that he's ever had in his career. And that's going to really help the Broncos for this stretch because they've got the Colts at home. They win that game, they pretty much eliminate the Colts from this wild card spot. Then they've got the Chargers, which was flexed to Thursday Night Football, the first Thursday Night Football flex. This could be for playoff positioning, and that could be a massive game when it comes to the seeding. The Broncos right now scheduled to go into Buffalo in the first round of the playoffs. That's about the most difficult game you could have. What Broncos fans want is they want to be matched up against the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson. I know Sean Payton would love that matchup. Then they've got the Bengals. If they win that game, they will eliminate the Bengals from pretty much the wild card consideration. That and the Chargers game with the Colts are just huge for playoff implications. Then they round out against the Chiefs, and by that time, maybe the Chiefs have everything wrapped up. So this is not a gimme for the Broncos, but like I said earlier, this is the first time since 2016 the Broncos have been favored to make the playoffs. And boy, have expectations changed in Denver quickly. This went from, okay, maybe the Broncos can have a winning season to now it's like, okay, we're in a playoff spot. Don't blow this right now.
Zach, great stuff, man. It's going to be interesting to watch that all play out again as the Dolphins come on strong. But, you know, the Sean Payton keeps getting the job done with Bo Nix there in Denver. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, fellas.
All right. As we now move to one of the crazier games that played out yesterday, the Cowboys and Commanders in Washington. I mean, so many just bizarre plays, special teams plays, really from start to finish. I mentioned it earlier in the show, all the missed kicks that were going on early in the game, late in the game, kick returns. It was wild. So we bring in Joseph Hoyt now from DLLS to tell us how the hell the Cowboys beat the Commanders yesterday. The Commanders were 11-point favorites in this game.
Yeah, that was exactly how the Cowboys drew it up. You know, they envisioned just an 86-yard touchdown by Jaden Daniels. You got to rely on Austin Seibert to miss those PATs. Man, it was crazy. And, you know, it's funny, the mood here, it's funny what a win can do because the mood, I'm at the Star right now, the Cowboys facility. They had lost 5 in a row going into that game. The mood here is just so much different today on a rare Victory Monday here in Frisco, Texas. But that was insane. I think the big thing the Cowboys were able to do was just stay in the game long enough to kind of actually run their offense a little bit. You know, you'd seen them get the doors blown off them so many times that they'd really gone away from their scheme and their offense and kind of went into more, hey, Cooper Rush, throw the ball 55 times, you know, last week against Houston. This time they were able to stay in the offense, let Rico Dowdle run the ball, and just do enough, frankly. And honestly, I think, you know, the Cowboys won that game, but Washington definitely didn't do themselves any favors.
No, they didn't. They certainly shot themselves in the foot several times. And you go from being a double-digit underdog. I don't know what the spread's going to look like come Thanksgiving. They should be heavily favored against the Giants. Chance to get back-to-back wins here. What would that do for the Cowboys going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. If you kind of watch our show, we've been on Team Tank now for about the last 2 weeks, and all of a sudden the tank looks like it's got wheels kind of coming off here a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's some confliction between Cowboys fans because you're 4-7. Yeah, you got to win, but I mean, man, what a loss would have done for your draft position and maybe the chance to get Travis Hunter or something out here, you know, pair Abdul Carter with Micah Parsons. But now they're in this weird boat, though, because, yes, they got the Giants at home who they have dominated of late. You know, that should be a win. Then you'd be 5-7 with 3 games coming up against teams that are very beatable. You know, you have the Cincinnati Bengals who are definitely fighting for an AFC wildcard spot, but beatable. You got the Carolina Panthers who, unless Bryce Young does what he did yesterday, should be pretty easy to beat. And then you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers who are a pretty good 5-6 team right now. But again, that's not a team that like genuinely scares you in terms of what the Cowboys could do. So all of a sudden, you know, you got no Dak Prescott for the rest of the season. But if you kind of go on a run here and you maybe win 3 or 4, all of a sudden, you know, that NFC wildcard spot is not crazy. Right now, the playoff predictors probably have them around 5% of chance of making the playoffs. but that would steadily rise if they got a couple wins against some easy teams coming up.
Now, I don't mean to be taking shots here, but wouldn't it also be very Cowboys to come out and lose to the Giants on Thursday?
Oh, extremely Cowboys. I mean, honestly, this past win against Washington was extremely Cowboys. The moment you stop believing in them is when they actually do something. But it's funny because a lot of our fans were on our show yesterday and saying, hey, we can't even tank right. That was the one thing we wanted, and we can't even do that right.
Joseph, I've been there. I cover a team that's often is similar to that. What is there realistically for this team to accomplish between now and the remainder of the season on the heels of this win?
I mean, realistically, it's funny because I listed off these teams as beatable, right? Well, every team's going to be looking at the Cowboys as beatable as well. So, hey, maybe a crazy win against Washington, against Dan Quinn and your former DC, and maybe that sparks you a little bit. Maybe Cooper Rush has found something. Odds are probably against it. This is a team that's likely heading towards, 6-7 wins max. And, every coach is on expiring contracts. So it's kind of this weird juxtaposition between, hey, we want to develop guys for the future, but this coaching staff doesn't because they don't necessarily have a future here. Right. So, it's kind of this weird place. It feels, from an objective standpoint, it feels a little bit like football purgatory where, hey, we're heading towards top 15 pick rather than top 5, but the likes of us potentially making the playoffs are very slim.
Joseph, we were just talking about the impact of coaching, what an impact it's made with Sean Payton in Denver. And the Bears have a reputation for not paying coaches, and Jerry Jones does too, despite all the money that he has. What's the mood right now amongst Cowboys fans in terms of who they should go after, how frustrated they might be that, that money might stand in the way of that, and just is there a lack of realization like there seems to be in Chicago sometimes that it's so freaking obvious coaching matters? Why are you afraid to pay for it?
No, that's a great point too, and I think you hit on the money thing, and that's the reason why Mike McCarthy I think is still here because Jerry Jones doesn't want to pay a coach to go away. He's only fired one coach midseason, that was Wade Phillips, and he regrets it. You go look at Jason Garrett, he went to the end of his contract twice. Once it resulted in an extension, obviously the other time it didn't. And I think, to be honest with you, for Cowboys fans right now, there's a difference between who they want and who they think they're going to get. Because I think in terms of wanting, they want Ben Johnson. They want someone from the Shanahan tree to come in there. They would love maybe a Clint Kubiak or something, a guy who pushes the offensive creativity to a level they haven't really seen here. But they also know that Jerry Jones doesn't like to take chances on coordinators and doesn't like to kind of go for that young up-and-coming creative route. He wants to get the guy who's proven himself. He wants the former head coach that might be a little bit available on the cheap. You start to think of, hey, what about Mike Vrabel? What about Bill Belichick? What about other guys that, hey, have kind of proven it, but you start to wonder maybe their time has kind of passed. I think, honestly, if Sean Payton was still available, that's a guy he would have loved to have when that happened. But obviously he's, pushing towards the playoffs there in Denver. So I think there's a difference between who the Cowboys fans think they're going to get and who they would actually want.
Is there anybody that maybe a bigger name that is playing their final downs in the final 6 games as a Cowboy? Because there's so many mouths to feed or so many players that they've paid or need to pay.
Yeah, DeMarcus Lawrence he's been injured pretty much this whole season, but he's an impending free agent. He's a guy that I think, it depends what the market does, but that might be a guy too expensive to bring back. You look at Zach Martin. I think that's kind of the big one we're wondering here is and to be honest with you, Zach has not played well this season. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, right? He's been fantastic, but he's a guy that's even hinted, he held out last season for a bigger contract. He's kind of hinted at or there's been some murmurs hey, maybe this is his last season before he retires. So that's kind of the big name. I would not expect Ezekiel Elliott to come back for a third time. I feel like that ship has sailed, and I'm kind of surprised we're even here to begin with for a second time. But yeah, that's kind of the big names. They looked at this season, to be honest with you, I think as a way to kind of get their books right, kind of go a little bit on the cheap. And I think that hopefully that they're seeing some benefits of that next season before they have to sign Micah Parsons to an extension. You could probably already book that being a holdout come training camp as well.
Yeah, that I can already hear those storylines being played out right now. Hey, Joseph, great job covering this team, obviously, and you get the Thursday Thanksgiving game coming up against the Giants. Just watch your head out there, make sure there's no debris falling from the roof of the stadium. out there in Jerry World. Thanks, man.
Yeah, take care, guys.
All right, Joseph Hoyt, who covers the Cowboys out there in DLLS. We got to wrap things up here, Bo. We got some shows coming up here at the top of the hour. Our Bears show at CHGO will be get going, and in Philly we got PHLY Eagles as they continue to cover the Eagles' big win over the Rams. Anything else you want to hit on here from around the league, though, before we get out of here?
Look, I mean, this playoff picture continues to kind of materialize. Teams take a step forward, teams take a step back. Things are just heating up. I mean, buckle up right now because this is going to be fun to watch play out over the next 6 weeks. Talk to Zac Stevens. You got the Broncos. They don't have the luxury of an AFC West, title because nobody's going to take down the Chiefs. They squeak one out against a feisty Panthers team. You've got, just a couple teams in the mix in the AFC, but nobody's going away. And then this NFC picture is just, it feels like there's so many teams still, a lot to play for as we turn the page after tonight's Harbaugh Bowl, which is big in the AFC as far as the Ravens and Chargers. But it's been a fun season, and it continues to get even nuttier going forward here.
Yeah, and I feel like this, week 12 is a reminder that it is the NFL and anything can happen. Cowboys beat the Commanders. The Titans went into Houston and beat the Texans out of nowhere. That one was very surprising. And then even going back to Thursday night, the Browns getting the win over the Steelers too. So there were a bunch of sort of wacky results to go along with plenty of chalk. But even the Panthers somehow pushing the Chiefs to the very end of that game was shocking to see. So it is the NFL, and crazy things happen.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the Bears pushing the overtime against the 9-2 Vikings team. That's something I got to pick your brain on, maybe even off air. Is like, what do we buy into 9-2 Vikings? I mean, I know they do a lot of things well, but are they as good as their record shows? And the Cardinals, they got a tough game on tap against them next Sunday, a game on Fox in the afternoon window. That's going to be a big game for the Cardinals. If they don't show up, they go back to 6-6 when they were in the driver's seat a week ago.
Yeah, looking forward to that next week. That'll give us a good opportunity to probably talk even more about the Vikings, who do deserve some attention. Kevin O'Connell deserves attention. Speaking of Coach of the Year, I mean, we see what he's doing there, that he's somebody who's got to be in the conversation too. And I guess that's sort of the theme of today's show. Coaching matters, and it continues to show up around the league. Hey, two good coaches tonight. Monday Night Football, the battle between the Harbaughs. I know I'm excited for this one. It's always it's good to have this matchup back in the NFL. In my opinion, it's been too long. Ravens going out there to the Chargers, and obviously that would be a huge win for the Chargers if they can beat a good Ravens team at home, where suddenly there's fans. I don't know if you saw last week. It's like, oh, wow, look, this place is actually full of Chargers fans. This is weird. And I'm sure it'll be like that tonight as well.
Jim Harbaugh gets people juiced. You see it. It's playing out. I think way ahead of schedule. Man can coach up some football. Can't wait for tonight's primetime game. All
right, that's going to do it for us. Thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the All NFL channel if you happen to be watching on one of our networks across the country. We do have the All NFL channel to subscribe to too. We got plenty of content that's get posted there throughout the week, and you should be following us on Twitter too. Got plenty of good stuff as we hack into all of the great reporters and analysts that cover our teams across the country here at All City. That's going to do it for us this week, though. For Bo Brack, I'm Adam Hoge. We will talk to you next Monday as we recap Week 13. Talk to you then.
We all silly like the mayor.